On this video, I would like to continue talking through the book of Revelation, and especially chapter 8, looking at the grammar, the grammatical analysis, as well as some brief commentary. So we have seen how that the seven seals in chapter 6 had a parenthesis in 7 of the sealing of the 144,000, and then the seventh seal opens the seven trumpets. So we begin now in 8:1 with the trumpets, especially the six trumpets that it opens from in chapter 8 and 9. Kai haten enoixin tains fragida tain hebdamin agenata sige into urano hos hemiorion. That is, and when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in the heavens about a half an hour. Anoixin is from anoigo, the aorist indicative active, third person singular, from anoigo. The gamma and the sigma combining forms the xi here in the aorist tense. So when he opened the seventh seal, agenata, there was a silence. Agenata is from genomai. It is the aorist indicative middle, third person singular, from genomai, about a half hour. And so now we have this silence anticipating the storm that is about to follow. Sort of like a storm, you have a silence before the storm sometimes. So then we move on. Kai edan tus hepta angelus hoi anopian tu stekasin. Kai adathe son autois hepta salpiges. That is, when I saw the seven angels, and I saw the seven angels which stood before the throne of God, there was given to them seven trumpets. Adon is the aorist indicative active first person singular from harao. So, and I saw the seven angels which before God stood. Hestekasin is your aorist indicative active third person plural from hestemi, and they were given to them seven trumpets. Edathe son is from the root didomi, to give, the aorist indicative third person plural from didomi. And so now they began to blow the trumpets. And so we move on then. By the way, when he talks about seven angels, let me just share a note from the work Breaking the Code by Bruce Metzger. And that book has been a help to me in giving and looking at some of the background. He's done a wonderful job in describing background issues in the book of Revelation. And so angels clearly seem to be found in the apocryphal books of Tobit and also in the book of Enoch, in the apocryphal book of Tobit. For example, in Tobit, it reads, I am Raphael, one of the seven angels who stand ready and enter before the glory of the Lord, in Tobit 12:15. And the names of the other six, he writes, according to the Greek text of the book of Enoch, chapter 20, are Uriel, Raguel, Michael, Sariel, Gabriel, and Remiel. And that's found, by the way, in the book of Enoch, chapter 20. So the what we have here, possibly, that John is referring to that reference relative to the seven angels standing before uh, the throne of the Lord. So then, as we move on, or before God, I should say, verse 3, it reads, Kai alas angelas eothen, kai estate epi tu thusia steriu ekon libananton krusun kai adate auto thumiamata pala, genedose tais prasuchais, ton hagion panton ta thusiasterion ta klusun ta enopion tu thrandu. So notice as we read it then, and another angel came and stood by the altar, having a censer or an incense container, a gold incense censer, and there was given to him much much thumiamata, in order that he might put it upon the altar of gold, which was before much incense, that he might put it upon the altar which was before the throne. So as we look at this, notice another angel, Eothen, aorist indicative active and singular from Erkamai, and he stood. Hestate is from histemi. We're looking at an aorist indicative passive third person singular, by the altar having a censer, a gold censer, and it was given to him, edathe from didomi again, aorist indicative passive third person singular, there was given to him much incense, in order that he will give with the prayers of all the saints. So the purpose of the incense is to put it with the prayers of all the saints. Dose is your future indicative active third person singular from didomi, and of all the saints upon the altar, the golden altar which is before the throne. So now we're going to see the prayers of the saints coming up before the Lord. Kai anebe ha kamnas ton thumiamaton tais prasukais ton hagion ek keras tu angelu enopion tu theu. And the smoke of the incense went up with the prayers of the saints out of the hand of the angel before God. Anebe is from anabino, the aorist indicative active third person from anabino. So the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints out of the hand of the angel went up before God. And so he now is going to receive the prayers of the saints in what they've been going through, the sufferings that they've been going through. And we're looking, no doubt, at what the church was going through under the Roman Empire, and what God's people all through time, continuing even into today. Kai elefin ha angelas tan Libanon tan, kai Agemisin auton ek tu puras tu thusiasteriu kai ebalen estain gain kai agenanta brantai kai phonai kai astrapai kai says mas says mas and the angel took. Notice here the censer, the incense container, the censer. Alephin is the perfect indicative active third person singular from lambano. So the angel took the incense container and he filled it agemisin auton ectu puras. He out of the fire. Agemisin is from gemidzo, to fill, the aorist indicative active third person singular from gemidzo. He filled it out of the fire of the altar and he cast it unto the earth. Ebalon is the aorist indicative active third person singular from balo. And there were thunders, thunderings, and voices, and lightnings, and an earthquake. Again, on top, there were is the aorist indicative middle third person plural from Ginnamon. So this reminds us of what we have in the book of Exodus 19, preceding the giving of the Ten Commandments and preceding the appearance of the Lord and going in before the Lord. A similar parallel scene here, looking at God's presence and his judgment that he's about to give. So we move to the trumpets then with that introduction. It reads, Kai hoi hepta angeloi, hoi ekantes tas hepta, salpegas, he toimasan autus hena salpisosin. The seven angels who are having the seven trumpets prepared them in order that they might blow the trumpets. Notice here, ekantes is present participle, nominative masculine plural from echo. So the seven angels who were having the seven trumpets, chetoimasin is from the root chetoimazo, the aorist indicative active third person plural. They prepared them, the seven trumpets, in order that they might blow them. Salpisosin is from salpidzo, the aorist subjunctive active third person plural from salpidzo. Now we begin with one trumpet after another. It reads, verse 7, Kai haprotas asalpisin, kai agenata kalatsa, kai pur mimigmena in haimati, kai ablethe estain gain, kai ka ta triton, tes gaze kata kai, kai ta triton ton dendron kata kai, kai pas cortas floras kata kai. I should be saying kai all the way through here. And the first blew the trumpet, a salpisin from salpidzo, indicative active, third person singular. So the first blew the trumpet, and And I think I had my speaker turned off. So let me pick it up now in verse 7. Uh, the first, Salpidsin, blew the trumpet from Salpidzo, the aorist indicative active third person singular, and there was uh, kalatsa, there was hail and fire mingled with blood, and it was cast unto earth. Agenata is your aorist indicative middle third person singular from genomai. There was hail and fire, mimigmena from mignumi, mixed, having been mixed with blood, a perfect passive participle, um, accusative singular from mignumi. So there was hail and fire mingled or mixed with blood, and it was cast. Eblathe is from the root balo, the aorist indicative passive third person singular from balo, unto the earth, and the third of the earth was burned from katakaio, aorist indicative passive third person singular from katakaio, and the third of the trees was burned, again the same aorist indicative passive from the same root, and all the grass, the green grass, was burned, uh, same aorist indicative passive katakaio. So notice this this judgment is upon the creation, not upon people, but upon the creation. And notice we're looking at what's happening on the earth, what's happening with the trees and the green grass and so forth. When we think of the trumpets, our mind goes back to the Exodus and to the plagues of Egypt. And no doubt John is drawing back to that context and applying it here. And so he's looking at the physical judgments that's coming upon the earth. So then we go to the second trumpet. Kai chadiuteras angelas kai chos oras mega puri kai amenan eblethe eis tain thalasan kai agenata ta tritan tes thalases chaima. And so as we come to this trumpet, the second angel, as salpisin is the aorist indicative active third person singular from salpidzo. He blew the trumpet, and as a great mountain with fire burning, kayamenon, it was cast. It was cast as a great mountain with fire burning. We have a participle in kaiamenon, uh, and ablethe, the passive, present passive participle. Ablethe is from balo, the aorist indicative passive third person singular from balo. It was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood. Agenata is the aorist indicative middle third person singular from Genomai. And he continues, Kai apethenon ta tritan ton katismaton ton ente thalasse ta ekanta suchas. Kai ta tritan ton toyon df daresan. And the third of the created creatures died of the sea who were having life. souls here, meaning they were living creatures, and a third part of the ships were destroyed. Pesthenon is from apoknesko, the aorist indicative active third person singular. And so, third of the creatures died, which were in the sea, who were having souls. Notice ekanta is the present participle, neuter plural from echo, accusative plural, who were having souls, and a third of the ships, df tharisin, were destroyed. From diaphthero, to destroy, the aorist indicative passive third person plural. So this reference is looking, no doubt, at back to Egypt again in the plagues, where the water became blood and it was undrinkable and so forth. It's interesting, again, Metzger alludes to what happened in the Vesuvius incident. Let me just read. This is on page 64 of Breaking the Code. Bruce Metzger writes, the imagery that to describe his visions may have been in part suggested by storms, earthquakes, and eclipses of the first century. If, as is likely, Revelation was written after AD 79, when the sudden eruption of Vesuvius completely engulfed the city of Pompeii, with molten lava and destroyed ships in the Gulf of Naples, readers, from reports they had heard of the catastrophe, would have had no difficulty picturing something like a great mountain burning with fire being thrown into the sea. And so it seems that he is describing and possibly alluding to the Vesuvius incident. And the readers would have picked that up, I think, realizing that God is judging nature, allowing things to happen in nature. We don't come to humans and what happens being afflicted till chapter 9, in what seems to be a demonic horde let loose. So now we're looking at the nature itself. And that is sort of what Exodus. You had nature being plagued and so forth. So then we come to the next angel, the third angel, verse 10. Kai hatritas angelas esalpisin, kai episin ektu uranu, aster megas, kai amenas, hos lampas, kai episin epi ta tritan, ton patamon, kai epitas pegas, ton hudatum. And the third angel blew the trumpet. Out of heaven a great star, burning as torches, and it fell upon the third of the rivers and upon the springs of the waters. A salpisin again, the third angel blew the trumpet, aorist indicative active, third person singular, from salpizo, and there fell, episin is your aorist indicative active, third person singular, from pipto, out of heaven, a great star burning, kaiamenos, from the root kaio, to burn, present participle, middle, nominative singular, as torches, and it fell upon the third of the rivers, episin again from pipto, aorist indicative active third person singular, and upon the springs of the waters. So we're seeing this star, and the name of it will be wormwood. Notice verse 11. Kai ta anama tu asteras legatai ha absinthas, kai agenata ta triton ton hudaton eis absinthan, kai paloi ton anthropon, apethenon ekton hudaton hate epikranthesan. And that is, and the name of the star is being called wormwood, which means something that's very bitter. Legantai is your present indicative passive third person singular from Lego. And there was a third part of the waters that became uh, wormwood, and many men died out of the waters. And so we are now having where nature is affecting humans. Many men died. Apethenon, the aorist indicative active third person plural from out of the waters because they were epikranthesan, they were bitter or embittered from from pikrino. Here we have the aorist indicative passive third person plural from pikrino. So basically, the waters are now bitter, and it's not something that is drinkable, that one can drink. And so we're looking at things happening in nature. And no doubt that was happening when John wrote, or before John wrote, even, and the readers would have understood that and would have seen, again, the judgment that God is bringing in nature. And it looks at really what can happen in seemingly through time, but especially at the end of time, similar kind of judgment. And then we come to the fourth angel, Kaiha tetartas angelas esalpisan, kai eplege ta tritan tu heliu kai ta tritan tes selenes kai ta tritan ton asteron, hena scatiste ta tritan auton, kai he chimera me fane ta tritan autes kai he nux hamoios. So we render it, and the fifth angel blew the trumpet. Again, a salpicin from salpizo, the aorist indicative active third person singular. And a third of the sun was plagued. Eplike from pleso, to smite or bring a plague, aorist indicative passive third person singular from pleso, and a third of the moon and a third of the stars. We're reminded of the Exodus again, what happened in the Exodus, similar kind of imagery, in order that their third might be darkened. Scatizo is the root. Scatiste is your aorist subjunctive passive third person singular from scatizo, in order that the third of them might be darkened and the day might not appear, from phino, the aorist subjunctive third person singular from phino, a third of it might not appear, and the night likewise. So we're seeing darkness. And again, all of this seems to go back to the plagues of Egypt. Very similar imagery. And so we have now verse 13. Kaedon, kai ekusa genas etu petamenu in mesuranemati legantes phone megale. Uai, 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 tous katoi kuntas epites ges, ekton loipon te salpigas ton trion angelon ton melanton salpidzin. And I saw and I heard of one eagle flying in the midst of heaven and saying, again, Adon is from Harao, the aorist indicative active third person or first person singular. And I heard Akusa from Akuo, another aorist indicative active first person singular, of the one eagle flying. Petamenu is from petamai. It is your present middle participle, genitive singular from petamai, flying in the midst of heaven, saying, legantes, another present participle, genitive singular, masculine, from lego. So saying with a great voice, uai, 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 woe, 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 toward the inhabitants, katoi kuntas from kao, your aorist, this is your participle, your present active participle accusative, I should say, not aorist, present active participle accusative, present participle accusative plural from katoi kao, dwelling upon the earth out of the remaining voices of the trumpets, and the three angels who are about to trumpet, from melo, another participle, genitive, masculine, plural, and salpidzane is your infinitive, your present active infinitive from salpizzo. So there's a warning of the woes that are to come in the angels, the fifth and the sixth angel that is about to blow the trumpet. And that will pick up in the next chapter, uh, in chapter 9. Now, in looking at this chapter, it's interesting how different commentators have understood it. Uh, there are those, this is all futuristic, that this will not take place until after the church is raptured in what is understood as the tribulation period. Others believe that this is looking at sort of what has happened in around the first century and what was going on as a way of encouraging those going through the Domitian emperor worship struggle and letting them know that God is bringing judgment in nature, much like what happened when Israel was in Egypt and the plagues were brought. And then another way that this has been viewed is not only seeing this in a historical way, but then encompassing time, all through time. In the present time, since John wrote this, including that time, as well as through history, world history, and then culminating before the return of Christ. This will become more and more intense as well. And this type of, can I say, judgment against the element of the creation. But it's we don't get to where humans are being actually attacked, so to speak, or judged until we come to chapter 9. And that will be demons let loose and so forth. And again, that could refer not only to the first century, but to what has happened through time and what will happen in a final eschatological sense in the last time. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm enjoying just working through some of the grammatical morphology of this text. Thank you for listening.